ॐ विश्वंदर्पण दृश्यमान नगरी तुल्यन्यजान्तर्गतं पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिर्वोद्भूतं यथा निद्रया यस्साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयम् तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नारायणं पद्मभुवं वसिष्ठं शक्तिं च तत्पुत्रपराशरं च व्यासं शुकं गौडपदं महान्तं गोविन्दयोगीन्द्रमथास्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यमथास्य पद्मपादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यं तन्तोटकं वार्तिककारमन्यान् अस्मद्गुरून् सन्ततमानतोऽस्मि श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः परब्रह्मनिष्ठं स्वतो धर्मनिष्ठं अहिंसैकनिष्ठं स्वशिष्यै सुजुष्टं यतीनां वरिष्ठं गुरूणां गरिष्ठं दयानन्दरूपं मदाचार्यमीडे नमः श्री परमार्थाय संसाराध्यासनाशिने श्रोत्रियब्रह्मनिष्ठाय तस्मै ब्रह्मविदे नमः सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम् नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयः प्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्स सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत् वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुम् भीष्मद्रोणतटा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवती कृपेण वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोत्तीर्णा खलु पाण्डवैरणनदी कैवर्तकः केशवः पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थगन्धोत्कटं नानाख्यानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाबोधितं लोके सज्जनषट्पदैरहरहः पेपीयमानं मुदा भूयाद् भारतपङ्कजं कलिमल प्रध्वंसि न श्रेयसे मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम् यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तन्न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः I welcome you all to the 8th class of our Bhagavad Gita study. We will read verse number 32 that we were studying in the last class. Na kankshe vijayam Krishna
लकाङ्क्षे विजयं कृष्ण
na cha rajyam sukhani cha
न च राज्यं सुखानि च
kinno rajyena govinda
किन्नो राज्येन गोविन्द
किं भोगैर्जीवितेन वा.
किं भोगैर्जीवितेन वा.
As we saw in the last class, Arjuna asked Krishna to position the chariot so that he can get a view of both the armies. And when he saw the people on both the sides, he saw his relatives everywhere. Kripaya Varaya Vishtaha, we saw that he was overpowered with compassion. Kripaya Paraya Vishtaha. तान समीक्ष्य स कौन्तेयः सर्वान् बन्धून् अवस्थितान् कृपया परया विष्टः विषीदन् इदम् अब्रवीत्. So he was overpowered by compassion. But as we saw that this was not compassion that arises out of strength and knowledge, but this is really a modified form of attachment, a modified form of emotional dependence upon people, objects, and situations that arises out of ignorance and weakness. So Arjuna is overpowered by this compassion, misplaced compassion. And then he says, Drishtve mam swajanam Krishna. Swajanam Krishna, that Krishna I am seeing Swajana means my own people. And having seen these people and the fact that I have to fight against them, Siddhanti mama gatrani, he says, that my limbs are feeling weak. Mukhancha parishishyati, my mouth is becoming dry. And then Vepa thushcha sharire me, my body is trembling. Roma harshascha jayate, my hair is standing on one end. And Gandivam Samsate Hastat, the bow, the great Gandiva bow, whose twang created fear in the hearts of all those people who are engaging in adharma. The great Gandiva bow is slipping out of my hands, he says. Gandivam Samsate Hastat. And Tvakchaiva Paridahyate, my skin is burning, he says. And Nacha Shaknomya Avasthatum, I cannot stand. I cannot even stand. And Brahmativa me manaha, my mind is whirling around. And Nimittani cha pashyami, I see all these omens, Viparitani Keshava, I see all these bad omens. Nacha Shreyonu pashyami, I don't see anything good. Atva Swajanama way by killing these people in this war. So as we see, the ragaha has got converted into shokaha. The attachment has got converted into sorrow. And here, the verse that we just read, he says, Na kankshe vijayam Krishna, na cha rajyam sukhani cha. I don't desire. I don't desire this kingdom, these comforts, these pleasures. I don't desire them. And Rajyena Nahkim, he says, Kim no Rajyena Govinda, Rajyena Nahkim, what are we going to do with this kingdom? And Kim Bhogair Jivitena va, what is the use of all these pleasures? What is it? What is the use of living? In fact, his sorrow is now getting converted into some kind of a depression where he sees meaninglessness in life. He sees that life will be meaningless without these people. What Vedanta says is that you are full, complete, and limitless, being one with Ishvara. And therefore, you don't need to depend upon anything else for meaning or purpose in life. But out of ignorance, and out of raga, what happens is that the jivaha starts to depend upon people, objects, and situations for one's own completeness. And once one starts to see it that way, one also starts to see that life becomes meaningless without the people, objects, or situations that I am depending upon. For example, a musician who has derived a lot of joy out of music, he may feel that life is meaningless without music. Or a sportsman may feel that life will be meaningless without sport. Or a businessman who has been conducting a business for the past 40 years may feel that life is meaningless without the business. So there is always this kind of an addiction or dependence that comes in upon something external for my own fulfillment, for my own completeness. But what Vedanta says is that one doesn't have to connect anything for my fullness, for my completeness, for deriving meaning or purpose in life. Because one is already full, complete, and limitless. That is the teaching that is going to come. So Arjuna has forgotten that the purpose of this war is really dharma samsthapanam, that establishment of dharma. He has forgotten that original motive, and now he is he has been overpowered by sorrow, and we can also start to see the moha come in now. So we will read verse 33. येषामर्थे काङ्क्षितन्नः
येषामर्थे काङ्क्षितं नः
राज्यं भोगाः सुखानि च
राज्यं भोगा सुखानि च
त इमेव स्थिता युद्धे
त इमेव स्थिता युद्धे
प्राणान् त्यक्त्वा धनानि च
प्राणान् त्यक्त्वा धनानि च.
So he says kangshitam. Kangshitam in the first quarter we can see that. It means are desired. Kangshitam. What are desired? It says Rajyam Bhogaha Sukhani Cha Kangshitam. The kingdom, enjoyments, and comforts are desired. So desired for whom? Desired for whom? Naha kangshitam. So he says yesham arte kangshitam naha. Naha means for us. So rajyam bhoga sukhani cha naha kangshitam. These kingdom pleasures and comforts, they are desired for us. And he says yesham arte, for whose sake? For whose sake are they desired by us? What kind of people are they for whom we are desiring these comforts? So he has Bhishma, Drona, and other relatives in mind. He says that they are not really desired for us, but for the sake of our relatives and for the sake of people like Bhishma, Drona, etc. And these people, he says, te ime, in the second line we can see that ta ime, after the sandhi vichhedaha becomes te ime. So te ime avasthitaha. Te ime avasthitaha. So the very people for whose sake we are desiring all of this, they are themselves, they have assembled, he says. Te ime avasthitaha. So they are those who have assembled here. And having done what? Having done what? He says, tyaktva. Tyaktva, in the last quarter we can see, pranans tyaktva dhanani cha. So tyaktva, they have assembled here, having given up, he says. Tyaktva, having given up what? Pranans tyaktva dhanani cha. So pranan dhanani cha tyaktva. So having given up their lives, literally, because they are ready to lay down their lives, having given up their lives and also their wealth, they are assembled here, he says. So effectively what Arjuna is saying, that he has forgotten that the purpose of the yuddham is dharma samsthapanam. And he says that for the kingdom and the comforts and the pleasures that are desired by us for the sake of certain people, and he has Bhishma, Drona, etc. in mind. For example, people often dedicate a victory to somebody. And they dedicate the victory to their coach or to somebody else. So Arjuna probably has some such feeling in mind that I'm going to dedicate everything to certain people. And those very people are assembled here, having laid down their lives and all their wealth. They are ready to give up everything. And they will not be around when I win the war. That is what he's feeling. So again, it is not that Arjuna doesn't know right from wrong. He knows what dharma is, what adharma is. But temporarily his dharma, adharma, vivekaha has been overpowered by shlokaha and mohaha. And therefore he is coming up with various arguments about why he should not fight. We'll read the next verse, 34. Acharyaः pitarah putraः
आचार्याः पितरः पुत्राः
तथैव च पितामहाः
तथैव च पितामहाः
मातुलाश्वशुराः पौत्राः
मातुलाश्वशुराः पौत्राः
शालाः सम्बन्धिनस्तथा.
शालासम्बन्धिनस्तथा.
Again, Arjuna is repeating the names of the various people who he is seeing all around him in the war. It's like a person, when a person has some kind of an emotional breakdown, then sometimes the person keeps saying the same thing over and over again, like a broken record. So Arjuna is now again repeating that I see these following people here. Acharyaha means my teachers. Pitaraha, the father side, uncles. Pitaraha. Putraha, those sons of my cousins who are like my sons. So putraha, tathaiva cha pitamahaha, and I see people who are like my grandfathers, and matulaha, like my maternal uncles, shvashuraha, in-laws, pautraha, grandsons, shyalaha, brothers-in-law, sambandhinaha, relatives in general. So Arjuna is saying, I'm seeing all these people. And now in the next verse, he's going to talk about why he doesn't want to kill any of them. We'll read verse number 35. Etan nahantumicchami
एतान्न हन्तुमिच्छामि
natopi madhusudana
नथोऽपि मधुसूदन
अपि त्रैलोक्यराज्यस्य
अपि त्रैलोक्यराज्यस्य
हेतोः किं नु मही कृते.
हेतोः किं नु महीकृते.
He says, hey Madhusudana. You see Madhusudana in the second quarter. Hey Madhusudana. Madhusudana means the slayer of Madhu, the slayer of the Rakshasa called Madhu. So he says, hey Madhusudana. So he is indirectly saying that you slayed the Rakshasa Madhu. It was perhaps easier for you to kill the Rakshasa because he was a Rakshasa. But these people, he says, they are my relatives. And therefore, how can I slay them? So he says, na ichhami etat, he says, etan na hantum ichhami. So we take the na and ichhami. So na ichhami, I don't desire. I don't desire what? He says, hantum. Hantum na ichhami. I don't desire to slay them. Slay whom? Etan, these people. I don't desire to slay these people. Etan hantum na ichhami. And what kind of people are they? He says, gnataha api. In the second quarter, gnataha api means even if they are killing me, I don't want to slay them. Gnataha api. And then he says, api trailokya rajyasya, in the second line we see, trailokya rajyasya hetoho api. So even if I am given the kingdom of the three worlds, he says, even if I am giving the kingdom, the rulership of all the three worlds, I don't wish to slay these people, he said. And Kim nu Mahikrute. Kim nu Mahikrute means then what to talk about the small kingdom on the earth? I'm not willing to do this, even if you give me the rulership of the entire universe. Then what to talk about? The small kingdom of the earth, on earth, that doesn't interest me at all. He says, Kim nu Mahikrute. So he is effectively willing to let adharma win. So far he was saying, दुर्बुद्धेः धातराष्ट्रस्य प्रियचिकीर्षवः. He was saying that Duryodhana is a durbuddhi and all these people are literally licking his boots, as they say. All these others who are around Duryodhana, they are just carrying favors to him. They want to be in his good books and therefore they have joined him and they are supporting him. So it was very clear that they are all engaging in adharma. But his dharma viveka is not functioning anymore. He says that when people are my swajana, when they are my relatives, then it is okay for them to do certain papas. Whereas if somebody is not a relative, then they need to be punished. So this is where his judgment is going wrong. So he begins to see the entire war as adharma. And he is going to continue on a similar theme. We will read verse 36. निहत्य धातराष्ट्रान्नः
निहत्य धार्तराष्ट्रान्नः
का प्रीतिः स्यात् जनार्दन
का प्रीतिः स्यात् जनार्दन
पापमेवाश्रयेदस्मान्
पापमेवाश्रयेदस्मान्
हत्वैतानाततायिनः.
हत्वैतानाततायिनः.
So in the last word of the second quarter, we see Syat Janardana. Janardana. So he's addressing Krishna as Janardana. So Janan Durjanan Ardayati. Janan Durjanan Ardayati Hinastiti Janardanaha. Janardanaha means one who gives sorrow to those who are durjanas, who engage in adharma. Because Bhagavan, he is addressing Krishna as the one who gives sorrow to those who engage in adharma. Because Bhagavan is karma phaladata, and the job of Bhagavan is to give the appropriate results of actions to everybody. And if people are engaging in adharma, then they have to be given the appropriate result. So addressing Krishna as Janardana. And he says, Ka priti syat. What pleasure is there? What pleasure or happiness is there? He says, Ka pritihi syat. For whom? So he says, Nihatya dhatarashtran naha ka pritihi syat. Naha ka pritihi syat means what pleasure or satisfaction is there for us, he says. And having done what? So Nihatya dhatarashtran, meaning having killed these sons of Dhritarashtra, what pleasure or happiness will we get? What satisfaction will we get? So he is really thinking about actions in two ways. And we have also talked about this, that every action has got two results. One is called drishta phalam, which is the visible result of that action. And the other is called adrishta phalam, which is the invisible result of action, which we call punya or papa. That accrues and provides its result at a later point of time. So here he says that by killing the sons of Dhritarashtra, there is not going to be any good drishta phalam that we can expect from it. For example, if I reach out to somebody who needs my help, and I reach out and help that person, then I get a certain satisfaction out of it. I get a certain good feeling about it. So that can be called the drishta phalam of it. Drishta phalam of that action. But by killing these sons of Dhritarashtra, we are not going to get any good drishta phalam out of it. Ka pritihi syat, he says. What satisfaction is there? And he also argues that even the adrishta phalam that is going to come out of this, he says that will also be unfavorable. He says, ashrayet. Papam evashrayet asman, he says in the third quarter. Papam evashrayet asman. He says, ashrayet means will come. Prapnuyat will come. What will come? Papam eva, he says, this action will bring us papam only, he says. Papam eva ashrayet. For whom? Asman, for us, this action of killing these people in the war is going to only bring us papa, he says. Having done what? Hatva, etan atatayinaha, in the last quarter. Hatva, etan atatayinaha. So having killed having killed whom? Etan atatayinaha. Having killed these atatayis, he says. Atatayin. Having killed these people who are atatayins. Atatayin means a person who has committed one of the 6 types of crime. There are 6 types of crime identified by the Dharma Shastras, and one who has committed one of the 6 types of crime is called Atatayin. So, what are the 6 types of crime? So there is a shloka that points out the 6 types of crime. It says Agnidaha. Agnido garadaschaiva shastronmatto dhanapaha. Agnido garadaschaiva shastronmatto dhanapaha. Kshetradara haraschaitan shadvidyat atatayinaha. So the shloka points out 6 types of atatayis. And what are they? Agnidaha. Agnidaha means an arsonist who sets fire to something. Agnidaha. And Garadaha means one who poisons somebody else. Agnido Garadaschaiva Dhanapaha, Shastronmatto Dhanapaha. Shastronmattaha refers to somebody who is armed and attacks an unarmed person. Shastronmattaha. And Dhanapaha means one who cheats somebody else of their wealth. Dhanapaha. And Kshetra Dara Haraschaiva. So Kshetra Haraha means one who encroaches upon another's property. Or Dara Haraha means one who kidnaps another's wife. Dara Haraha. Shad Vidyad Atatainaha. So these are the 6 types of Atatainas. And according to the Dharma Shastras, that is the laws that were prevalent at that time, these Atatais, they were deserving of capital punishment. And therefore, now if you look at it, Duryodhana has not committed just one of these crimes. He has committed all 6 of them. Because he tried to burn all the Pandavas in the Lakh Palace. So he is an Agnidaha. And he has tried to kill Bhima by poisoning. So he is a Garadaha also. And Shastron Mattaha, he has tried to attack people. For example, you can take Krishna's example. When Krishna went to went as an envoy with a peace proposal, he tried to chain him and attack him. And then Shastron Mattaha Dhanapaha. Yes, he has cheated the Pandavas of their wealth. Kshetra Daraharaha. He has confiscated, he has encroached upon their property. And he also tried to kidnap and insult Draupadi. So he is in some ways, he is a Maha Atatai. Swamiji says that if there was a Nobel Prize for Atatais, then Duryodhana would probably get that, and without any dissent in the Nobel Committee, everybody would agree that he should get it. So such was Duryodhana. But now what he's saying, and the dharma of a Kshatriya, if you look at it, is to enforce the law. Whatever the prevalent law is, he should enforce it. That's what a Kshatriya's duty is. So himsa in this case becomes the dharma of a Kshatriya. And when the Kshatriya does that dharma, then he gets punyam and not papam, because he is doing the duty that is ordained for him. But now we look at how clouded his vision has become. He says that if we kill these atatais, we are going to get papam and not punya. So this is his moha. We read verse 37. Tasmanarha vayam hantum.
तस्मान्नार्हा वयं हन्तुम्
Dhatarashtrans svabandhavan.
धार्तराष्ट्रान् स्वबान्धवान्
Swajanam hi katham hatva.
स्वजनं हि कथं हत्वा
Sukhinasya madhava.
सुखिनः स्याम माधव.
So he says, hey Madhava. The last word of this verse we see Madhava means, oh Krishna, he's addressing Krishna. And the first word we see Tasman Narha. So we break that as Tasmat Na Arha Vayam. Tasmat Na Arha Vayam. So he says Tasmat, therefore, Vayam Na Arha. Vayam Na Arha, meaning that we are not qualified. It is not proper for us, he says. Vayam na arhaha. Vayam na arhaha to do what? He says, Hantum dhatarashtran swabandhavan. Hantum, we are not qualified. It is not proper for us to kill. Hantum dhatarashtran swabandhavan. These sons of Dhritarashtra who are our relatives, he says. So what Arjuna is proposing is as ridiculous as saying that a country should have 2 constitutions Constitution, book number 1 and book number 2. And then if there is an Atatai, you first check that if the Atatai is your relative. And if the Atatai is your relative, you refer to Constitution number 1, which says that he should go scot-free. And if the Atatai is not your relative, then refer to Constitution number 2 that says you give him capital punishment. So that is effectively what Arjuna is suggesting here. And then he says, Swajanam hi katham hatva. Swajanam hi katham hatva. Meaning, Swajanam hi hatva, by killing our own people. Katham sukhina syama, he asks. Katham sukhina syama, how can we be happy, he says. So the question that is revolving in his mind is that if a certain giving a certain punishment makes us happy, we should give that punishment. If it doesn't make us happy, we should not give that punishment. So we should not just go by the Constitution, what the Constitution says, but whether the Constitution is making me happy or not. That is the criteria. We'll read verse number 38 and 39. Yadyapyetena pashyanti
यद्यप्येतेन पश्यन्ति
लोभोपहत चेतसः
लोभोपहत चेतसः
कुलक्षयकृतं दोषम्
कुलक्षयकृतं दोषम्
मित्रद्रोहे च पातकम्
मित्रद्रोहे च पातकम्
कथं न ज्ञेयमस्माभिः
कथं न ज्ञेयमस्माभिः
पापादस्मान्निवर्तितुम्
पापादस्मान्निवर्तितुम्
कुलक्षयकृतं दोषम्
कुलक्षयकृतं दोषम्
प्रपश्यद्भिर्जनार्दन
प्रपश्यद्भिर्जनार्दन.
Arjuna is now falling deeper into his moha, confusion. And now, instead of feeling that he is confused, now he actually feels he is very clear. That is the irony of it. So in confusion, he thinks he is actually confused. But now he is beginning to think that he is seeing something that others are not seeing. He has actually become very clear in this process. So here we come to know about a certain power of the mind. That when the mind is confused and deliberating on some wrong action in confusion, then the mind can take over the intellect, the buddhi, and then the buddhi starts justifying whatever action that confused mind is contemplating. This is the power of the mind. So then it becomes like the devil who's quoting the scripture, as they say, the devil who's quoting the scripture. So then one can even start to quote the scripture and say, to find support for whatever one is saying, to find support for that and try to justify that using the scripture. So Arjuna gets into that kind of a mode now. So he says Janardana. In the last word of verse 39, we see Janardana means, oh Krishna. And in the first quarter of verse 38, we see Yadyapi na pashyanti, Yadyapi ete na pashyanti. So Yadyapi ete na pashyanti means he says, even though Yadyapi ete na pashyanti, these people do not see, he says. These people do not see. And what kind of people are they? He says, ete lobopahata chetasaha, means these people who have been overpowered by greed. So he's talking about the sons of Dhritarashtra, saying they are overpowered by greed. And they cannot see the right from wrong. They cannot tell the right from wrong, he says. And what are they not seeing? What are they not seeing? He says, kulakshaya kritam dosham. in the third quarter of verse 38. Kulakshaya kritam dosham means they are not seeing the papa that will be born out of the destruction of families. Destruction of families, the papa that will be born. Because he's saying that when there are many able-bodied men who are there in this war, and when the men are killed, when the men are killed in this battle, then their families will effectively get destroyed, he says. So these people who are overpowered by greed, lobo pahata chetasaha, ete lobo pahata chetasaha na pashyanti, they are not able to see this. And what else don't they see? Mitra drohe chapatakam, he said. They don't see the papa of betraying one's own friends and relatives. So really speaking, yes, the scripture also say that friends and relatives, mitra droham, etc. is there. One should not betray one's friends and relatives, and he's talking about that. We should try to reach out to friends, relatives, etc. That is what we generally talk about. Otherwise, it's called mitra droha, betrayal of friends and relatives. So he says they cannot see all this is wrong. But I can clearly see, he says. So in the next verse, in verse 39, he says, Katham na geyam asma bhihi. He says, how come we are not able to see this? How come we are not considering? He says, Katham na geyam asma bhihi. How is it that we are not considering? And what kind of us? He says, in the last quarter of verse 39, he says, Prapashyad hir janardana. So, Prapashyad bhihi, asma bhihi, katham na gneyam, meaning by us who can see, who know. Who know that this is wrong? How come we are not considering, he says. And what do we see? He says, Prapashyad bhihi kulakshaya kritam dosham prapashyad bhihi asma bhihi katham na gneyam. We are able to see this destruction, the papa born out of destruction of families. Kulakshaya kritam dosham. How come we are not considering? And what are we not considering? He says, nivartitum. Nivartitum means to withdraw. Nivartitum. Withdraw from what? Asmat papat. Papad asmat nivartitum. In the second quarter of 39. Papad asmat nivartitum. How come we are not considering withdrawing from this papa? He says. While we know better. Sometimes we also say that he is an ignorant person. He doesn't know. But at least we know better. So why do we want to come down to his level? When a person knows better. So he's arguing in that manner, saying that we know better. So how come we are not considering just withdrawing from this war? From this papa, he says. So Arjuna is effectively saying that we should just withdraw from this war. And at this point, Krishna is just silently listening to him. Krishna doesn't say anything at all, because when a person is overpowered by emotion, then whoever is talking, it is better that he exhausts whatever he has to say before the other person steps in. So Krishna is just letting Arjuna exhaust whatever he has to say. And now Arjuna continues on his discourse about the destruction of families. So really speaking, we also emphasize the importance of a family and the importance of family dharma and all that. So standalone, a lot of what Arjuna says has merit. Because even the scriptures talk about some of these things. But like we said, that he is quoting the scripture to justify his position. So we will see what Arjuna continues to say here. We'll read verse number 40. Kulakshaye pranashyanti
कुलक्षये प्रणश्यन्ति
kuladharma sanatanaha
कुलधर्मा सनातनाः
dharme nashte kulam kritsnam
धर्मे नष्टे कुलं कृत्स्नम्
अधर्मोऽभिभवत्युत.
अधर्मोऽभिभवत्युत.
So he says that the men in this battle will be killed and their families will be destroyed. So now he says, what will be the consequences of the destruction of the family? So he says, Kulakshaye, when the family is destroyed, when a family is destroyed, then what will happen? He says, Pranashyanti Kula Dharmaha. The Kula Dharmas will be destroyed, he says. And what is Kula Dharma? Kula Dharma means the family values, the family, the culture that is practiced by the family, the religious and spiritual practices, the various customs and traditions of the family. They all will be destroyed, he says. Kula dharmaha pranashyanti. And what kind of kula dharmaha are these? He says sanatanaha. Sanatanaha means that these kula dharmas that have been passed down through countless generations. So kulakshaye sanatanaha kula dharmaha pranashyanti, he says. And then what happens when these kula dharmas are destroyed? In the second line he says dharme nashte. Dharme nashte, when this dharma, the kula dharmas are destroyed, then he says, adharmaha abhibhavati uta. Adharmaha, in the last quarter, kulam kritsnam adharmaha abhibhavati uta. He says, adharmaha abhibhavati uta. Means adharmaha will overpower, he says. When dharma is destroyed, then adharmaha will overpower, he says. And adharmaha will overpower what? He says, kulam kritsnam. Means the entire family, whoever is surviving in the family, they will all be taken over by adharma, he says. So these kula dharmas, these family values, culture, and all the customs and traditions and religious and spiritual practices, this is what he's referring to. Now, if we look at it, we also emphasize the importance of all this because we say that if each member of the family has got their own arthaha and kamaha agenda, they want to pursue their own pleasures and they want to pursue their own securities, wealth and security, etc. So, what brings the family together as a unit is really, we say, the dharma. The dharma refers to the prayers and worship and rituals and deities and pilgrimages and all these customs and practices that the family does together. So these kinds of things bring the family together, hold the family together as a glue. And if dharma is gone, then what is left? Only artha and kama is left that is not governed by dharma. And therefore, each person of the family can individually pursue their artha and kama. So we say that the society will become materialistic. In fact, the house, the home, the family home will become more like a hostel. People barely see each other. Each of them has got their own artha and kama pursuits. And then at some point, each person comes and takes something out of the fridge and microwaves it and eats it and disappears, and they barely see each other. So in this kind of an environment, what is the glue that is going to hold the family together? There is no incentive for the family to stay together as a unit. And therefore, we say that such a setup will lead to unstable families. And when families become unstable, then the children that are products of those families, we see that people who come from unstable families, they may get into drugs or violence, and all of these kinds of issues can overwhelm the society. So we also emphasize on a lot of these things. But Arjuna is quoting this to justify his stand. That's the point here. And then Arjuna continues with what happens when adharma overpowers the family. Adharma bhibhavat Krishna
अधर्माभिभवात् कृष्ण
pradushyanti kulastriyaha.
प्रदुष्यन्ति कुलस्त्रियः
Trishu dushtasu varshneya
त्रिषु दुष्टासु वार्ष्णेय
jayate varna sankaraha.
जायते वर्णसङ्करः.
So he says, Adharma bhibhavat Krishna. So, hey Krishna, he says, Adharma bhibhavat. Means the men die in these battles, the families are destroyed. When the families are destroyed, the Kula Dharma is gone. When the Kula Dharma is gone, the family gets taken over by Adharma. And when the family gets taken over by Adharma, he says, Adharma bhibhavat. When the family is taken over by Adharma, then he says, Pradushyanti. Pradushyanti means will fall into improper conduct. And who will fall into improper conduct? He says, Kulastriyaha. The women in the family will fall into improper conduct, he says. Because he is saying that women have an important role in preserving dharma. And if you look at the mother-child relationship, the mother-child relationship is a lot more intimate. It is the most intimate relationship because the mother has carried the child for 9 months, which a father cannot do. So the mother is much, much more closer to the child in that sense. And therefore, now if the mother is the first role model for the child, and if the mother becomes valueless, then the child will become valueless. So Arjuna is coming from that angle. And he says, Hey Varshneya. In the second line, he says, Hey Varshneya. Varshneya means one who is born in the Kula, in the lineage of Vrishnihi. So Vrishnihi Kulaha, Vrishni Kula Prasutaha. Vrishni Kula Prasutaha means one who is born in the lineage of the great Vrishni Kula, he says. So he's referring to Krishna's lineage here because now Arjuna is talking about lineages. So you are born in this great family of Rishnis, he says. But then look at this. He says that abhibhavat, dharma abhibhavat, adharma abhibhavat Krishna pradushyanti kulastriyaha. The women fall into the wrong conduct. And strishu dushtasu, he says, when the women fall into wrong conduct, then what happens? Jayate varna sankaraha, he says, that there arises varna sankaraha. So here Arjuna is talking about the Vishesha, Samanya and Vishesha dharmas. So we also talked about Samanya dharma, which is dharmas or a code of conduct that is universally applicable to everywhere. Satyam vada dharmanchara, so Satyam, Asteya, Ahimsa, all of these are universal dharmas. The general rule, which is Samanya dharma. But then we have said there are Vishesha dharmas that depend on the person, on the time, place, and person. And it can vary from person to person. And that depends upon the ashrama and the varna the person belongs to. For example, if a person is a student, brahmachari, or a grihastha, householder, or a vanaprastha, this person who is leading a relatively retired life, or a sannyasi, then depending upon the stage of life of the person, based on the ashrama, the dharmas vary, which is called Vishesha Dharma. And similarly, there is also Varna Dharma. So Varna Dharma means that the society is looked upon as an organism as a whole, for example. The society is looked upon totally as an organism. And if we take, for example, the human body, and there are various essential functions that have to be performed within this body for this body to be healthy. For example, there's a nervous system that senses and reacts to stimuli. Or there is the circulatory system. Or there is the immune system. The body needs immunity. So there's a nervous system, the immune system, the immunity system, or the circulatory system, or the skeletal system. So these are all essential functions that have to be performed for the body to be healthy. And there are various organs that perform this function. For example, the center of the nervous system is the brain. So the brain does the specialized activity of taking charge of whatever the nervous system has to do. Or then there is the immune system that safeguards the body. So there's a specific organ that spreads over the whole body, which is responsible, that we totally call as the immune system. Or then there is the circulatory system, which is governed by the heart, which then pushes the blood everywhere. Or then there is the skeletal system, which is required for the movement of the body. So all of these are essential functions. And no function, one function is superior to another function. All of these are essential functions. For example, if the brain does its work, but the skeletal system has collapsed, then the organism cannot sustain. Or if the circulatory system is working well, but the nervous system has collapsed, again the organism cannot be healthy. So every function is an essential function. There is no function which is greater or lesser. But this task of this essential functions are assigned to certain organs in the body. So similarly, the society also is envisioned as one whole organism in which certain essential functions are required. And one of the functions is the function of learning and teaching. Learning the right things in the society and teaching the right things in the society, teaching that knowledge which has to be known by everybody, teaching the right values, learning the right values, living the right values, teaching the right values. This is important for a healthy society. So this is the function of scriptural learning and teaching and spiritual, religious activities, etc. And then there is the function of governance and politics and defense. This is also important for the society. No function is greater or lesser. Every function is important and equally essential. And similarly, there is the function of economic and business activity. Again, a very important function. Without money, nobody can survive. And therefore, there has to be this activity in a healthy economy in any society. And then there is a function where the first three functions have to be supported. So the first three functions are going to need goods and services to support them. And therefore, somebody has to provide all the supporting functions. So these are the fourfold functions that any healthy society requires. And the Varna system envisaged that just like in this body, we have different specialized organs that perform these functions. Similarly, there will be people who specialize in each of these activities. So in the case of scriptural learning and teaching and spiritual religious activities, there are the Brahmanas, whose activities are centered in this area. They specialize in this area. Exactly like you may say the brain specializes in dealing with the nervous system. But then there are those who are responsible for politics and defense, etc., and governance, and they are the Kshatriyas who specialize in this particular activity. And then there are the people who drive the economy of the entire society, and they are the Vaishyas, which is like the heart that is pumping blood everywhere in the body. And then there is the entire skeletal system equivalent. Which actually do the work that for example the body does, the mobility, moves around and does various kinds of work. Now even that is very important for the survival of the body. So no activity is higher or lesser, and that fourth varna is called the Shudras. So all of these activities are important for the sustenance of the society. And exactly like different organs that specialize in these activities, we have different people who specialize in these activities. And when a child is born in a certain family, then a natural consequence was that the child naturally picked up all of these activities that were going on in the family without any special training. Because if this person, for example, was involved in business, he would see his father and his uncles and all of them just involving in business, talking about business, discussing business. So he would be privy to all these conversations right from childhood, and he would naturally pick up all those skills. There is no special training required. So also in any other varna, the child would naturally pick up all of this. And exactly like the brain, for example, we see the brain replaces itself every 7 years. We say that every cell in the body replaces itself every 7 years. So, like the cells, they just continue to produce the newer cells and the old cells go away. So the continuity, there's a continuity of the brain function, there's a continuity of the heart function. Similarly, each of these varnas, the next generation, when the old generation was ready to step back, the next generation was ready to take over. And therefore, the entire society's function continued in an undisrupted manner. So all of these, each of these communities, each of these varnas had their own set of family values and traditions and customs and practices and rituals, etc., that were passed down from generation to generation as the kula dharmas, varna dharmas. And so Arjuna is saying that if the women in the family become artha kama pradhana and they abandon dharma, the able-bodied men are killed, the women abandon dharma. And what happens is that they see no value in continuity of dharma because they have become artha kama pradhana. And therefore, then what will happen is a mix-up of the varnas will happen. Mix-up, this is called varna sankaraha that Arjuna is referring to. So when a mix-up of the varnas happen, then the child in that mixed up varna, now the child is has to think about the future. Here, for example, in that Varna, the child just grew up and knew what to do. Whether he picked up all the skills and practices that were necessary. But in this mixed up Varna, now the child doesn't have a role model or doesn't have any clear direction of what to do. And then what happens is then everybody will just say that when dharma goes to the background and one becomes artha kama pradhana, then everybody will go for the highest paying job. So if computer scientist gets the highest paying job, everybody wants to become a computer scientist. So if you have a society where everybody becomes a computer scientist, will that society work? No. So these kinds of problems arise. And then there is for example, if we take a Brahmana's activity, that's perhaps the most uncertain and the least paying activity in some ways because a Brahmana is supposed to lead an austere life and survives purely on dakshina that is given by other people. Doesn't have any regular income. If he goes somewhere, does some puja, he gets some income. So then nobody will be interested in pursuing a Brahmana's activity because learning the scriptures and is a lifelong activity because our scriptures are so vast. So who is going to study scriptures? Everybody will abandon that and try to become a computer scientist or an AI engineer or whatever is paying more. And therefore, there will be a general decline if everybody abandons the Brahmana dharma. Then who is going to propagate, who is going to teach the right values to the generations? And therefore, there will be a general decline in culture and religion and spirituality. The entire society will become artha kama pradhana. Jayate varna sankaraha. We'll continue. Verse 42. Sankaro narakayaiva
शङ्करो नरकायैव
kulaghnanam kulasya cha
कुलघ्नानां कुलस्य च
patanti pitaro hyesham
पतन्ति पितरो ह्येषाम्
luptapindodakakriyaha.
लुप्तपिण्डोदकक्रियाः.
He says Sankaraha bhavati, meaning the varna mix-up happens. So what is the sequence he has in mind? The men die in the battle, the families are destroyed. The families are destroyed, the kula dharmas are gone. The kula dharmas are gone, the adharma increases. When adharma increases, then women don't follow dharma. And the women don't abandon, when women abandon dharma, then varna mix-up happens. And therefore, he is saying that Shankaraha bhavati, this varna mix-up happens, and he says narakayaiva. He says it will lead to naraka, means that in the future he says that one will go to lower lokas. And who will go to such lower lokas? He says kulabhnanam kulasya cha, means the one who are the destroyers of this family unit. And those families who have abandoned dharma altogether, who have just become artha and kamaha pradhana, who have become materialistic, then such people will land up in naraka. He says they will go to lower lokas. And then what happens? He says, patanti pitaraha hyesham lupta pindodaka kriyaha. So the current generation will go to naraka, he says, those who have become materialistic. But even their ancestors, he says, will fall. Patanti pitaraha hyesham. Pitaraha, the ancestors, patanti, they will fall. Meaning that why would they fall? Because lupta pindodaka kriyaha, because the ancestors have been denied of their post-death rituals. See, in Sanatana Dharma, the post-death rituals are considered to be very important part of the Kula Dharma. So according to the family's customs and practices, that the ancestors have to be pacified. And these post-death rituals are done in two forms. One is Pinda Kriyaha, which is done during the Shraddha ceremony, the annual ceremonies of ancestors who have passed away. And also the monthly ceremonies in the form of Tarpanam, etc., which is Udaka Kriyaha, where oblations are offered in the form of these the Tarpanam. And therefore, when the ancestors are denied of their offerings, then even the ancestors will fall, he says. Atanti pitaraha Yesham. And whose ancestors? Yesham, he says. Their ancestors, meaning those who are responsible for the destruction of the families and those who are surviving in these families that have become artha kama pradhana, means highly materialistic families. So the general thinking that is there is teaching. I would say the teaching of the Vedas is that the ancestors, when the ancestors are supported by the current generation through the pinda and udaka offerings, etc., because the ancestors themselves have their papas. They may have done certain papas. So these offerings, etc., that are done, they help in neutralizing those papas, and they help support the ancestors in their lokas. And if these kriyas are not done properly, then the ancestors also suffer. That is what happens. And they don't receive the blessings of the ancestors they would otherwise receive if they had done the rituals properly. So we'll read verse 43. Doshairetaiः kulaghnanam
दोषैरेतैः कुलग्नानाम्
varnasankarakaiः
वर्णसङ्करकारकैः
उत्साद्यन्ते जातिधर्माः
उत्साद्यन्ते जातिधर्माः
कुलधर्माश्च शाश्वताः.
कुलधर्माश्च शाश्वताः.
In the second line, he says, Utsadyante. Utsadyante means they are destroyed. What are destroyed? He says, Jati dharmaha utsadyante. The dharmas of that community are destroyed. And what else are destroyed? He says, Kula dharmascha utsadyante. The dharmas of the families, these values and culture and customs and practices, those are destroyed. And what kind of dharmas are these? He says, Shashwataha. Shashvataha jati dharmaha kula dharmascha utsadyante. So these dharma that have been perennially passed down from one generation to another. With a lot of effort, they have been preserved and passed down. But due to the wrong acts of this one generation, everything is lost. So all it takes for these practices and customs to be lost is one generation, which it has been passed down through countless generations, but to lose it just takes one generation. And destroyed by what? So he says, doshaihi etaihi doshaihi, by these wrong actions, they are destroyed. And whose wrong actions? He says, kulagnanam etaihi doshaihi, by the wrong actions of the destroyers of families. And what type of wrong actions are these? He says, varna sankara karakaihi. So these wrong actions that cause families to be destroyed, that cause the mix-up, varna sankara, and loss of family dharma, etc. So all of these wrong actions cause the destruction of jati dharma and kula dharma. We'll read verse 44. Utsanna kula dharmanam
उत्सन्नकुलधर्माणाम्
manushyanam janardana
मनुष्याणाम् जनार्दन
narake niyatam vasaha
नरके नियतं वासः
भवतीत्यनुशुश्रुमा.
भवतीत्यनुशुश्रुमा.
So again he says, hey Janardana. In the first line end, we see Janardana, means again addressing Krishna. Oh Janardana. And in the last word of this verse, we see Bhavati iti anushushuma. Anushushuma means we have heard, he said, we have heard. And what have we heard? He says, Narake, in the last line, in the second line, we see Narake niyatam vasaha bhavati iti anushushuma. We have heard that living in Naraka will be inevitable. He says that one will go to lower lokas. And for whom will living in Naraka be inevitable? He says, Manushyanam, for those people. For what type of people? Manushyanam means what type of people? Utsanna kula dharmanam means for those in whom the family traditions and dharmas have been destroyed. For those type of people, because they have become now, they have given up all dharmas and they have become essentially artha kama pradhana. And if they have become artha kama pradhana, what's the difference between such people and materialists? And therefore, they will go to lower lokas, he says. We'll read verse 45. Aho batamahat papam
अहो भत महत्पापम्
kartum vyavasita vayam
कर्तुम् व्यवसिता वयम्
yadrajya sukhalobhena
यद्राज्यसुखलोभेन
hantum swajanamudyataha.
हन्तुम् स्वजनमुद्यताः.
So he says, Aho bata. Aho bata means alas. It's a great tragedy, he says, alas. And then, alas, why? What is he saying is a great tragedy? He says, Aho bata mahat papam kartum vyavasitaha vayam. Vayam vyavasitaha, he says. Vayam vyavasitaha means we are determined. We are determined for what? He says, Kartum vyavasitaha vayam. We are determined to do. And what are we determined to do? Kartum vyavasitaha vayam. Kim kartum vyavasitaha vayam? He says, Mahat papam. He says, we are determined to do a great papa, he says. Mahat papam kartum vyavasitaha vayam. And then in the second line, he says, Udyataha. Swajanam udyataha towards the end. Swajanam udyataha. Udyataha means we are ready. We are ready to do what? He says, Hantum. Hantum udyataha. We are ready to kill. We are ready to kill whom? Swajanam, our own people. Swajanam hantum udyataha. And because of what? He says, Yad Rajya Sukha Lobhena. Because of our greed for kingdom and pleasures, because of our greed for kingdoms and for the kingdom and pleasures, we are ready to kill our own people, he says. So Arjuna is now having not knowing that he is confused. Now he thinks that he has total clarity on this issue. And therefore, he is surprised that why did we not think of all this before? Where was our dharma and adharma viveka? Because this is what I am talking about is dharma viveka, he says. And because we have now committed to doing this, we are now going down a path of great papa, of killing our own people. But now, at least after I have told all this, we are wiser now, he says. We are wiser now, and therefore we can now avoid this papa. So Krishna is letting Arjuna exhaust whatever he has to say. So Krishna is staying quiet. And now Arjuna says his last words in this chapter, verse 46. Yadi mama pratikaram
यदि मामप्रतीकारम्
ashastram shastrapanayah
अशस्त्रं शस्त्रपाणयः
धातराष्ट्रारणे हन्युः
धार्तराष्ट्रान् रणे अन्युः
तन्मे क्षेमतरं भवेत्.
तन्मे क्षेमतरं भवेत्.
So we see he's saying yadi. He starts with yadi. And then in the third quarter, dhatarashtraha rane hanyuhu. So we connect the yadi and hanyuhu. So he says, if they were to kill, yadi hanyuhu, if who were to kill. So he says, yadi dhatarashtraha rane hanyuhu. Yadi dhatarashtraha hanyuhu. If these sons of Dhritarashtra were to kill, he says. And what kind of sons of Dhritarashtra? So in the end of first line we see Shastra Panayaha. Means with weapons in their hand. With weapons in their hand, if these sons of Dhritarashtra were to kill, he says. And kill whom? He says, Yadi mam apratikaram. So if they were to kill me, mam, if they were to kill me. And what kind of me? Apratikaram. Means one who doesn't offer any resistance, who doesn't offer any fight back at all. So if the sons of Dhritarashtra were to kill me, who doesn't offer any resistance, who doesn't offer any fight? And where? He says, Rane Dhatarashtraha Rane Hanyuhu, if they were to kill me in this battle, without me offering any resistance or fight, then he says in the last quarter, Tanme Kshemataram Bhavet, Tat Me Kshemataram Bhavet, and that would be better for me, he says. He says, I am ready to get killed at their hands, and I will avoid doing this great papa of killing them, he says. At least I will not be engaging in adharma. And so after saying this, Arjuna has exhausted whatever he has to say. He now stops speaking. Krishna has stayed quiet all this while. So now Sanjaya takes over because this entire thing is happening. We should not forget Sanjaya is narrating this to Dhritarashtra. So we'll read verse 47. Sanjaya uvacha
Sanjaya uvacha
evam uktvarjuna sankhye
evam uktvārjuna sankhye
rathopastha upavishat
रथोपस्थ उपाविशत्
visrijya sasharam chapam
विसृज्य सशरं चापम्
शोकसंविघ्नमानसः.
शोकसंविघ्नमानसः.
Sanjaya Uvacha. Sanjaya is now narrating, continuing his narration to Dhritarashtra. And he says Upavishata. At the end of the first line, we see Upavishata. Upavishata means he sat down. So who sat down? He says Arjuna Upavishata. Evam Uktva. Arjuna, in the first line we see Evam Uktva. Arjuna Upavishata. Arjuna sat down. And what kind of Arjuna is he? In the end, he says, Shoka Samviktna Manasaha means one, his mind has been overpowered by sorrow. So Arjuna, whose mind has been overpowered by sorrow, sat down. Shoka Samviktna Manasaha Arjuna Upavishata. And having done what? Did Arjuna sit down? He says, Evam Uktva. At the beginning, we see Evam Uktva. Means having said this, whatever Arjuna had said so far, having said that, he sat down with his mind overpowered by sorrow. And where did he sit down? He says, Evam Uktva Arjuna Sankhye. Sankhye means in the middle of the battlefield, Arjuna sat down. And having done what? The second line he says, Visrijya Sasharam Chapam. Having cast aside, Visrijya, having cast aside Chapam means his bow, the great Gandiva. He sets his bow aside. Sasharam, along with the arrows, along with the quiver of arrows, he sets aside the bow. So this now shows that his shokaha and mohaha have culminated in swadharma parityagaha. He is about to do swadharma parityagaha, an abandonment of his duty. And where did he sit? It says rathopastha upavishate. So if we take apart the sandhi, it becomes rathopasthe upavishate. He is seated in the middle of the chariot. On the seat of the chariot, he sits down, having abandoned his bow and arrow, overcome with a mind overcome by grief. So Arjuna is completely overwhelmed with sorrow now. And he has been taken over by confusion also. But he thinks he is very clear in the confusion. But Arjuna still did not run away, because perhaps he still had some doubt lingering somewhere in his mind. So a lot of times people say a lot of things. They pour down a lot of things that are in their mind. They pour it all out. But they do that with the idea that I just want to also listen to what the other person has to say. So now Arjuna has completed whatever he has to say, and now he wants to listen to what Krishna has to say. So with this, Vyasacharya concludes the first chapter. So it is like if you watch some of these serials, TV serials, then this is the end of one episode of that serial, and which is ending with some kind of a suspense. Now, what is going to happen next? So they try to get you hooked so that you will come back to see what is happening, what is going to happen next. How is Krishna going to respond to Arjuna? So with this suspense, the first chapter has concluded. And we will read the last shloka, which appears at the end of every Bhagavad Gita chapter. The same template appears at the end of every Bhagavad Gita chapter. Om Tat Sat
Om Tat Sat
Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gitasu
Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gitasu
Upanishatsu
Upanishatsu
Brahma Vidyayam
Brahma Vidyayam
Yoga Shastre
Yoga Shastre
Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade
Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade
Arjuna Vishada Yogo Nama
Arjuna Vishada Yogo Nama
Prathamodhyayah.
Prathamodhyayah.
Om Tat Sat. Om Tat Sat is Om Tat Sat. So these are really three names of Bhagavan, three names of the Lord. Because later in Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 17, there's another shloka that explains Om Tat Sat. There it says Om Tat Sat iti nirdeshaha brahmanah trividha smritaha. Meaning these are the three names of Brahman, three names of Bhagavan. Om means the one who protects. Avati rakshati iti Om. The one who protects, Rakshana Karta, one who is Palana Karta, one who protects, is called Om. So Om is a name for Bhagavan because he protects the devotee from various obstacles. And Tat is Sarva Pramana Agocharaha. So Tat means it refers to that, literally that. Like in Tattvamasi, we have the word Tat, which refers to that, which is Ishvara again. But Sarva Pramanaha Agocharaha means who is not available to be known by any of the sense organs, who cannot be objectified by any of the pramanas, who is never an object of knowledge, unobjectifiable. The unobjectifiable Lord who can never be an object of knowledge is called Tat. And Sat refers to that which is eternal existence. Trikale api tishtati iti Sat, which is there in all the three periods of time, which never comes and goes. The world may come and go, but Bhagavan never comes and goes. Therefore, Om Tat Sat are the three names of Bhagavan, are the three names of Brahman. And iti indicates that we come to an end of the first chapter. And what is this chapter called? Arjuna Vishada Yogo Nama Prathamo Dhyayaha. At the end, we see that end of the first chapter titled The Sorrow, the topic of Arjuna's sorrow. And where is this teaching? It is in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. This appears in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So Srimad means Shrihi Asya Asti. It is Srimad, one who has all the wealth. All the wealth belongs to Bhagavan. Everything here belongs to Bhagavan, including all the wealth. The Srimad Bhagavan means the Bhagavan who is the possessor of all kinds of wealth. The Srimad Bhagavad Gita, as we have seen, is the song of such a Bhagavan. Song of Srimad Bhagavan is Srimad Bhagavad Gita, or Bhagavan who is the subject matter of Gita, of such a Gita. So Bhagavad Gita is the song of Bhagavan, or the song whose subject matter is Bhagavan. So this chapter is present in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Upanishads, which is equivalent to an Upanishad. That's why it can be called Srimad Bhagavad Gita Upanishad. Upanishad refers to the teaching that brings an end to sorrow, an end to all shokaha and mokaha, an end to all sorrow and confusion. That teaching is called the Upanishad. And since the Bhagavad Gita is an essence of the Upanishads, as we saw, Sarvopanishado Gavaha Dogdha Gopalanandanaha Partho Vatsaha Sudhihi Bhokta Dugdham Gitamritam Mahat. So all the Upanishads are the cows, and Bhagavad Gita is the essence of the Upanishads, which is like the milk. So therefore it's called an Upanishad. And it appears in plural here, Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishad Su, because technically each verse of the Bhagavad Gita, each verse in the Bhagavad Gita can be called a Gita in itself. Each verse can independently be called a Gita. And therefore, Srimad Bhagavad Gita Su Upanishad Su. And Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre. So there are only two topics in the Gita. One is Brahma Vidya. Brahma Vidya means the knowledge of Brahman, the knowledge of ultimate reality, the knowledge of the real nature of Bhagavan. Or in other words, Vedanta is one of the topics of Bhagavad Gita. And the second topic is Yoga Shastre, Yoga Shastra, Yoga Shastram, which refers to the karma and upasana yogas which are there in the Bhagavad Gita. So the first Brahma Vidyas can be talked about as Vedanta or Dhyana Yoga. But Yoga Shastram refers to karma and upasana yoga, which are the means of purifying oneself to become ready for this knowledge. And Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvade, meaning which appears in the form of this dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. Such a chapter which is titled Arjuna Vishada Yogo Nama Prathamo Dhyayaha, we now conclude. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.